Welcome to Evolve Point, a Shadowverse podcast. I'm your host, Ignideus, and with me as always is my co-host, Fuchsia the Biscuit.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm fine. To be honest, a bit drunk on Shadowverse because I kind of binged the entire World Grand Prix weekend.
Oh yeah, and that's definitely something we're going to talk about today as one of our main topics for sure. It was a crazy weekend.
Yeah, what about you?
I'm just super happy. It's been a few weeks since the first episode, and the feedback we got was really positive. This episode is coming a few days late. It's supposed to come out every 2 weeks, but speaking of World Grand Prix, I was casting it, so I was a little bit busy.
I was also on vacation, so thank you for that.
That's true. But there's a lot to talk about. And by there's a lot to talk about, I mean there's not many topics to talk about, but the topics themselves, there's a lot to talk about within it. So let's just go ahead and kick it off. The World Grand Prix 2021 Day 1 and 2 happened just last weekend? So on the 13th and the 14th of November, 48 players from many different regions, and the top 8 ended up being from Japan, Korea, and China. So out of so many different regions, only 3 regions ended up making it into the top 8. So it was pretty cutthroat. And I think it really shows that some of these regions worked really hard and showed up.
To be honest, when you put it like that, it's kind of brutal.
Yeah, it is really brutal. Especially when you look at the prize pool distributions, right? And this was the hardest WGP I think Shadowverse has ever had. So if you're not aware of the competitive side of Shadowverse, every year, more or less, there is a World Grand Prix where players from a bunch of different regions around the world qualify through their respective circuits into this big tournament, and the prize pool is, it's more than $1 million, which is crazy for a card game, or just any tournament in general.
And if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but this time they also included, the ones who should have qualified for last year's Grand Prix, right?
Right, because in 2020, because of, the World Grand Prix was cancelled, so this time around, both 2020 and 2021 qualifiers were playing, which is why this is the hardest WGP so far. Instead of top 8 out of 24, it's top 4 out of 24 for each year. It's basically twice as hard.
If we for example, took each day on its own and took the top 8, there's actually quite a bit of representation from SVO and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
So I think it's just really cutthroat this time, and that's why the regions are kind of like that, I feel like.
Some of the games were just insane on that day. I mean, I casted it, and it was both exciting and exhilarating and also equal parts exhausting at the same time. Especially when I'm cheering for obviously, I'm the caster for Shadowverse Open Southeast Asia Oceania, so I'm cheering for my players, and some of the competition was just absolutely brutal. And they were so close, honestly.
It's kind of heartbreaking when, it's the decider game and they kind of lose. I think one of the biggest highlights, I think we should, put this front and center. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the person who people put as the favorite to win it all did not qualify.
Yeah, it is crazy. Shimon qualifying 3 times, right, through the Rage circuit. And Rage is an insane Japanese tournament with upwards of 2,000 people entering each time, which is crazy,
so competitive, first of all. Yeah.
Unfortunately, due to bad tiebreakers, he just didn't make it, which is crazy considering how performant he was in day 1. He was going X and O for most of the day, and then only in the last 2 rounds, basically, he dropped a few games. And I saw a little bit of controversy regarding the tiebreaker system that World Grand Prix used because of it.
This doesn't mean he played bad. I think everybody was just on such a high level that it was that tight. The difference maker was the tiebreakers, not the actual wins and stuff.
I guess we'll just say go watch it. It was crazy. The games were intense. They were insane. Obviously, it was pre-mini expansion, so keep that in mind. Tune into the grand finals in December. I believe it's December 19th to see the culmination of the entire 2 years worth of Shadowverse and see who takes the $1 million.
Oh, can I give a tip to the viewers? As someone who binged the entire thing, let me give you a tip. If you want to do it fast, if
just
you
skip.
don't have,
yeah,
if
just
you don't have time, just skip everything and just watch the games, man.
Games only, and watch them on 2x speed. You'll get there. It's not that long. Speed? I promise.
What do you sound like on 2x speed on casting?
Sometimes I speak really fast on cast too, so I imagine on 2x speed I'm like rap god, dude. Anyway, in other news, there has been a recent JCG post-mini expansion. Shoutouts to Jif, as always, for compiling the deck lists and the results. The top result is Sekka Forest and Last Word Shadow, so it looks like the mini expansion really didn't do a whole lot, to be honest.
It added cards to Forest, I guess.
It's true. And I mean, I'm being a little facetious. Second and third place is Accelerate Forest, which of course is made possible now because of the new King of Thorns, right? It also affected the meta in that Wardhaven is now showing up in the
Yes.
top 16 again, which I'm sure you're happy about.
Bellringer is also used in Last Words, so it's not like the mini expansion didn't add to the decks. It was just like it's not a huge shakeup in when you like see the entire class and archetypes.
Yeah, like on a macro level, it doesn't look like a lot has happened, but in the lists themselves, things have definitely changed a little bit.
Testament to Forest, man. Like, sorry for bringing back Grand Prix, but honestly, I feel like they really made a mistake by not making Forest the anime main character class because, oh my god, the amount of times they won out of nothing.
In that old Shadowverse manga, wasn't that main character for us, if I'm
yes.
not mistaken? Yeah,
Yes,
so...
we will talk more about this in like an anime-focused podcast. What I'm trying to say is like, Forest is very good right now, and I feel like the fact that it's a bit more of a high skill floor is also a bit healthier for the ladder, I think, because like less people are like inclined to like just slap it on their account and just use it.
Well, the main topic for today is obviously the mini expansion for the Dawn of Calamity expansion has released, adding more new cards. 1 gold, 1 legendary for each class, and then 1 neutral gold was added as well. Let's talk about the cards of the Minion. Which ones are your favorites so far?
The ones that made an impression on me so far is like Bellringer. She's been a lot more impactful than I thought. A lot of decks are running her.
Like we mentioned this before, Wardhaven is running her, Resonance Portal is running her.
It's kind of crazy because when I saw her, I'm like, oh, finally a usable version of Bellringer, but she's more than usable actually. Sacred Lion has me excited, of course, but not to an extreme extent, just because like even though it's good, it's not kind of like that bombastic kind of effect, right? So it's really hard to get excited for that.
I think probably the biggest card that has everybody talking is Calamity's Genesis, right? Calamity's Genesis has like some people memeing about it, trying to get the, you know, instant win condition going, and a lot of other people extremely salty because it gives Portal even more gas, as well as resonance support, invokes, and max health, right? So some people think the card is super broken, some not so much. What do you think of the card so far?
It's really hard to evaluate just because it does so much. I've beaten Portals with it, like with normal like Amulet Haven, so I don't think it's like overbearing. I don't think unless the game goes on for a bit. Honestly, this reminds me of like a Yu-Gi-Oh card, to be honest.
Yeah. It's got a lot of text, that's for sure. I think the alternate win condition is like straight up a meme and will generally never happen.
As it should. You know?
Outside of the most fortuitous of conditions. The card itself, honestly, I think it's a little overrated. Obviously, it's good. Like, it's run in all the Portal decks right now, right? And here's my problem with the Portal Crafts class as it stands. Nothing matters except for absolute tolerance.
Yeah, oh my
god.
god.
And that's why
so true.
I don't like the class right now. At the end of the day, Calamity's Genesis is an alright spell that might get better with support down the line, but right now, I think it's being massively overrated because it's just run in a deck that has this unfair win condition otherwise. The Magisterial Dreadnoughts and like the World Eater bugs or whatever, they're fine and all, but they're definitely manageable. It's not that big a deal. But then the absolute tolerance comes down, you're like, oh yeah, that's the class I'm fighting against.
It's probably a good utility card overall, like I said, because it does so many things. But I agree with you. Usually what makes you mad about Portal is like, oh, they're gonna destroy all my followers, I can't have a board. But no, this time it's just like, when is the absolute tolerance coming down? That's basically what wins or loses a match right now.
That and if they have 1 or 2, right? And that's, honestly, it's really lame, and I don't like it. Let's not go too off the rails here. I know we have a lot to say about absolute tolerance.
It's going to be an entire rant podcast.
Yeah. Now, talking about blood, obviously the Duskshade Bat, the gold, is poopy doo-doo, but the legendary is actually pretty cool. It's making Evolve Bloodcraft sort of come back after, you know, so long of just running into Wrath this entire time. Now Blood has other playable archetypes again. The big winners, okay, of this mini expansion are Dragon, Shadow, and Forest. So for Shadow, both Kernunos and Suzy Hexcaster are nutty cards. You can slot them into any Evo deck, you know, to reduce your Skeleton Raider, and it just summons a follower that evolves, and then you summon it again, and then it also invokes itself, and it's like, it's crazy, that combo. Unfortunately, it seems as though the class doesn't care. They're just playing Last Words anyway. So even though the cards they received in this mini expansion are super good and work really well with each other, and I believe they're going to be an integral part of Shadow going forward once the last word stuff starts to rotate out. Doesn't seem to matter, unfortunately.
Yeah, it feels bad that when you see the mini expansion cards, you're like, oh, maybe like this version of Shadow will come back. But yeah, and then you see JCG and like, yeah.
It's a bit disappointing, right? When you see last words on top again for like the 9th month in a row, and you're like, oh my god.
Dude, I'm getting mid-range Shadow flashbacks, man.
A baby could have been born. And in the entire time it was in the womb, it would have been last word Shadow at the top of the freaking tournament.
You know what I don't believe? I can't believe they printed basically another, like, what was it, Dark Prison Dragon?
Yes! Let's talk about it. So for Dragoncraft, of course, the Twin Fang Dragonoot Gold unbricks Buff Dragon, but honestly, that is peanuts compared to what Brutal Dragonoot does for that class. It's run 3 of in every Dragon list now, no question.
This is just like, okay, I'm gonna be slightly weaker statted Dark Prison Dragon, but better. It's Overflow too, which is honestly much easier today, like because of so much ramp in so many archetypes.
Yeah, if you're playing Face, you can play Ignis Dragon. If you're playing a Natura-based build, you have Gianna for that, you know? There's a lot of different ways to get to where you're going. Let's talk about the last big winner, I think. It's Forest. Miracle Harvest and King of Vines seem pretty innocuous. We talked about this a little bit earlier when we were talking about JCG, but King of Vines basically just revived Accelerate and made it like a huge archetype again. And we mentioned this on the last podcast as well, where Forest Craft is one of those classes where all it needs is one more piece to break the entire class. That happened when Primordial Colossus got its Accelerate, and it's happened again. One more Accelerate, and now Accelerate Forest Craft is back with King of Vines.
Yeah, definitely. Oof. At first I was like thinking like, this is nice, but I feel like can be a nuisance like board space wise for like combo forest. But no, actually an Accelerate forest, it's just an Accelerate. Like it's just good.
And it gives you options too, right? So if you play it a bunch, obviously your Fairy Flowering becomes active for your Latica or your Orisa or your, Walder. But also if you end up invoking it, you can play Fairy Flowering on the guy himself, and it's just a free body that comes out on the board. So it's a huge deal.
Yeah, indeed. In Accelerate, it's really good. I kind of underrated the card because I saw it in combo mostly. By combo, I mean like the normal Sekka one,
Right, yeah. Speaking of Sekka Latica, Miracle Harvest is fantastic in that deck,
yeah,
too.
It's also fantastic. It's one play point, summon a fairy, and then does more things.
So the condition for Miracle Harvest to proc its other effects is to play followers. And you know what Forest Craft does a lot of. So Forest is a huge, huge winner. And obviously that's reflected in the results as well. Okay, I think it's time to talk about the big losers, the L holders of this set. And that is, of course, Sword and Rune. So I think Rune is less of an L holder. Obviously, Imagination Realized is a big meme. It's supposed to be for Whims of Chaos, but Whims of Chaos is still bad because half the time it just screws you over.
I played like a 2 play point Yatalant against
yeah, right. The other card, Superior Contractor, is actually not a bad card at all. So Earthright Rune, I don't think it's gonna be topping the charts anytime soon, but with Superior Contractor added, will enable all of the cards in the deck. I really do think it's just a matter of time. There's gonna be a breaking point of support for this class, where then it all clicks together between the Pursuer Golem, as well as all the other cards that proc effects based off of stack, all benefit from each other, right? So, and honestly, the deck is now playable. It's not great, but it's playable. If this continues with the Magic Sediment support in the future, Burn Earthright can very well be a thing.
It comes back, man. It's coming back. I love Burn Earthright. Also, I really commend side games for thinking up of stack because it definitely like helps Earthright that honestly had a pretty limiting mechanic.
But let's talk about the biggest L holder of this mini expansion, which is Sword. Axe Pirate? Like, come on.
Even the legendary, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, right? It seems okay in Unlimited because you can tutor some crazy stuff. Or, having the Arthurian Light for Kagemitsu, for example. That's nuts.
Arthurian Light doesn't really have too much synergy with specific cards, I feel like, in Sword right now. But I feel also, like, this kind of card, the moment something with one play point, like, has, like, an unbelievable effect, or, like, you really want to tutor something, this becomes really good. So.
But right now, like we said, similar to Superior Contractor, it's just not doing a whole lot. Honestly, it's getting sad because the most common sword I see on ladder nowadays is Walfrid, and that's honestly just pathetic. It's like you're seeing somebody who peaked in high school, and you're looking at them now, and you're like, oh dear.
I think we need to talk about one more thing, though. The Acceleradium nerf.
I have played a little bit of Unlimited since the Acceleradium limit. So Acceleradium for Artifact Portal Craft, obviously, one of the most important cards and one of the most powerful decks in the format, has been limited so that you can only run 1 copy instead of 3. It's big. It's a huge deal. But Unlimited, honestly, I still hate it. D-Shift still comes out on 6, and Artifact can adapt with the Genesis Artifact build. Nothing has changed to stop Purgatory Floros on 3. And I know there's a lot of people who love Unlimited out there, but I think it's undeniable that some decks are you just have to take the L when they roll, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I think in general, the Acceleradium limit is a step in the right direction. It's nowhere near enough.
I almost feel like they should take, for Unlimited, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Or MTG approach, where they just have a limited or bans list, and they just update that with multiple cards every expansion drop.
I agree. They should be more proactive about changing the Unlimited format to make sure that it's playable.
I assume we're going into
No, we should talk about Milteo.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. Did you get them?
Yeah, I did get them.
Oh my god. You have a side games employee monitoring you.
Well, I didn't roll them from packs. I sparked them.
Oh, how many packs did you open this expansion already?
Well, clearly a lot. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Milteo leader. They are insane. The evolve animation is unreal. And the frame and everything. And I'm really glad that they're doing this. So basically, between this and Sekka, basically confirmed that all of the first place poll leaders will have way more care and attention put into them with custom frames and stuff.
Yeah, that's very exciting. I'm just really sad about the gacha system stuff.
Yeah, I talked about this on my stream today too. When people say that Shadowverse is a gacha game, I highly disagree. I do not think that CCGs are gacha games. I do not think that card games are gacha games. They're different genres. But Shadowverse's leaders... Now that's a gacha. You still have a bit of time. There's the event running, I think, till the 27th, where you can roll for packs every day, 1 pack a day. Fingers crossed you just get it, maybe. But that is gonna be it for this episode of Evolve Point. Thank you so much for listening. Let us know your thoughts on the mini expansion cards in the comments down below, and we'll read out some of your comments on the next episode. We were gonna do a letter section for this episode, but most of the comments were just really nice stuff like, oh, love the podcast, what a great idea, which we appreciate, but not a whole lot to commentate on.
Yeah,
when those are the comments. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. But yeah, leave your anecdotes, your stories, your feedback, whatever you want in the comments below. We'll be sure to read it. Make sure to rate and review and follow the podcast on all your platforms. I'm working hard to get this onto Apple Podcasts, but that website is not cooperating with me lately. But hopefully it'll be up by the time this episode goes live. So yeah, we are already on Spotify as well as Google Podcasts, so you can look for us there. I've been Ignideus.
I've been Fuchsia the Biscuit.
We'll see you all in another 2 weeks. Probably not late this time.